Wado. Thank you, Jeanette. She mentioned the Spokane just a minute ago, and we have from the Spokane tribe, Barry Moses, who's going to come and talk for a few moments. So Barry, if you'd like to come tell a story.
She just said that we Spokanes are real short, so I can... Low center of gravity. That's one of my favorite stories, actually. We have a version of that story in the Spokane tribe as well. And of course, for us, the Spokane people came from the heart, so, but they didn't have time for rebuttals, so I'm teasing. Beautiful story. Quichin lemt, uketsiau kele. Quichin es kushbach me ucheslu kayamen sudjet chwas kulchalt. Uchin lemt, uchin le, luol saaptenist ulichus. Lust ulichus til int upia, ink upiaya. Wacheltnet schujetche Uhetsen kukumisten Louisen Kueli Louin people hood Lutela est Ulehus. Uhwel Shayuchen lemt Uyets putte em Liest Ulech. Telling people hood telling upia Lutel Ksipi. Uchets en Wenem Lulis Puus. Uchestuchen le Uputi hets in Weston Chmil Komule Yele It's a hill putti hets whilled Look at people hood. So these are words that I've spoken in the Spokane language. And basically what I said was, how happy I was to be here. There's a good gathering that's here. Good things that are happening. And every time I come here to this country, I always feel the presence of my ancestors, my elders. Long time ago, the Spokane and the Nimipu people, had a strong bond. And these, this was almost like a boundary between us, but not a boundary, but a place where we come together. My great grandmother, my Kupiaya, was Nimipu, and so every time I come south, I feel that presence, and it's like they're still here. So I was asked to tell Coyote's story today. Well, I'm going to disappoint everybody right off the bat because I'm not going to do that. And no criticism or no judgment for anybody who's done that before me. Just that in my personal upbringing, in the way that I was instructed by my elders was to wait for those stories until the snow. And I know not everybody has that obligation. So again, I'm not casting any judgments on anybody else. Just that was the way that I was taught by my elders, to only wait to certain times of the years. And that's the obligation that was given to me. And so I have to respect that. I have to honor that. But I do want to share some stories with you. And it's unfortunate I don't know everybody here. I would love to know everybody and to feel connected and to be able to relate this story somehow to you. But I think the story that I'd like to share is really one more of a personal nature of how I've come to connect to our traditions and how I've come to connect to our land. And hopefully from that there would be a takeaway or a lesson or a teaching or a blessing that wherever you are, whatever country it is that you live in, that you would become more familiar with the things that are in that country. And I think nowadays in our modern age, in our modern times, it's really easy for us to become disconnected from the land that we live on. Because it's we don't know where our food comes from. We don't know where anything comes from. We go to the grocery store. We go to the fast food, the drive-through. We don't know where those things come from. But in our old ways of life, we always knew where everything was because everything was dependent upon the foods that were growing in their seasons. And that was part of the tradition that I was raised in, was to go around to all of the different food places still, even in our modern times, going around to all the roots and the berries and the medicines and things like that. And that was part of the obligation that I talked about earlier that I inherited from my father, from my family, from my elders. And I want to tell a short story about that, sort of, I guess, a follow-up to that, is that I inherited this responsibility to do certain gatherings and dinners and things like that. But I was very young when that happened to me. I was in my early 20s, when my father died, and I had to kind of take over some of those responsibilities. And so I didn't always know what I was doing, and I could say that my education wasn't really complete. And just as one example of that, several years after my father passed away, I had this really vivid dream. And in this dream, I was getting ready for this dinner that I was supposed to put together, and it very specifically said in this dream that they wanted me to serve sarvice and I had no idea what a sarvice was. I have no idea what this is. What is this? I'm sure I've heard this word before, but what is actually a sarvice and how would I know what this is? And I had this dream sometime in February. And I wasn't doing this dinner until the fall, and so I thought, okay, well, I've got some time to figure this out. So I go to one of my elders, a woman by the name of Thyra Moses, my aunt, who's deceased now. But she was one of my go-to people for that. So I go to meet with her, and I tell her about this whole dream. I used to tease her. She kind of reminded me of that little Charlie Brown character, Lucy, the doctor is in, 25 cents or whatever, 5 cents, 5 cents, right? Well, inflation, And so she would sit behind this little table, and she would sit in her little chair, and then she had another little chair on the other side. So you sit at this table, and she said, all right, well, tell me, what's on your mind? What's on your stemos spous? What's your heart? Okay, you tell her what happened, and then she'd give you answers. So that's how it was, so I come and I sit down at her little table, and she's working on her beadwork or whatever it is that she's doing, and she listens to the whole dream and everything, and I tell her about, the sarvice berries. I don't know what a sarvice berry is, she said, okay, so yeah, I've heard enough. She says, definitely, you have to do this. Well, I have to do what? Well, you have to serve these sarvice berries at this next dinner that you're going to do in the fall. Okay, yeah, I figured that. I figured as much of that. I said, but I don't know what a sarvice berry even looks like. And she said, well, that's a problem. Well, we're gonna fix that problem, right? And so, okay, so she said, and she's trying to explain to me, what a sarvice berry tree looks like, and it just wasn't forming in my mind. I have no idea. I don't know what's going on. And she said, well, this is going to be harder than it looks, I think, or than we think. So she said, all right, I'll tell you what to do. She says, I used to drive out, or I still do, drive out every Friday to sweat with my uncle, She says, I know you drive out to Welpinit from Spokane every Friday. She says, so when you're coming out here, right when you get to Little Falls, there's a split in the road, and there's the old bridge and the new bridge. And right where it splits, there's an old sarviceberry tree that grows there. And she said, this is what I want you to do. She says, I want you to stop there every Friday, come out a little bit early, 20 minutes earlier, and stop there. And I want you to stop and spend some time with this sarviceberry every Friday, from now until the fall. And so then you'll see what it looks like, because it was February then, so you'll see when it wakes up, you'll see when the leaves sprout, you'll see the flowers, you'll see the fruit, you'll become acquainted with it during all of this different seasons. And she says, are you able to do that? And I said, yeah, I'll do it. She said, all right, good, then you'll know. And so I did. I started doing that. I started coming out every Friday, 20, 30 minutes early. I would stop there and see this sarviceberry tree, and I would take pictures of it and make little sketches and notes in a little notebook. And I was just really getting intimate with this with this sarviceberry. I'm going to know who this person is. I'm going to figure this out. Right? And so pretty soon I see, the little sprouts are starting to come out, so I'm taking more pictures of it, and pretty soon the leaves are fully out, and I'm taking more pictures of it, and then pretty soon the flowers and all these things. And they have these beautiful white flowers, that just cover the whole tree. It is beautiful. And then so I was just so excited about that, just how amazing and how beautiful this plant was. And then this amazing thing happened. The next week, after I first saw the flowers, I'm driving out to Welpinit again, and I'm looking to the right, and there's all these white flowers on the side of the hill. And I'm looking to the left, and all these other white flowers on the side of the hill. Oh my gosh, what happened? They've planted these things everywhere. This is amazing. And so I'm like speeding out to Welpinit. I'm so excited. Everywhere, the whole stretch of road, the whole 40 miles to Welpinit, there's sarvice berries everywhere. This is amazing. I'm so excited, and I can't wait to tell my aunt, what I've discovered. So I'm just speeding on out there to Welpinit, and I come hot rodding into her driveway there, come slamming on my brakes, I'm running across the yard to go in there. I'm so excited to share this, and I look right in her backyard, giant sarvice berry growing. So I go running into the house, and I go sit down at the little table, put my nickel down. I say, Auntie, you'll never guess what happened. What? I was driving to Welpinit, and I saw they planted sarvice berries everywhere. It was amazing. They're blooming all over the place. And she said, yeah, they're pretty common. And I said, but you never told me that they were growing right here in your yard. And she got this sort of funny look in her eye, and she says, well, I didn't want to take away all your fun. But it was an amazing thing that happened to become acquainted with the landscape in that way. And that's just a little anecdote from my own life about how that happened. And for me, it was like, it wasn't just the sarvice berries, but it was the foam berries, and it was the choke cherries, and it was, all these other plants, and one by one becoming familiar with all of these things that are growing here. And as that happened, what started to happen for me is that my love and my respect for the land deepened. As I saw all these things that have been growing here since forever. And I'll share one last story with you, just to bring the point home that I'm trying to leave with you. As I became more familiar with some of these things, from time to time, schools would come together and say, "Hey, we're going to bring a group of third graders out. Will you kind of show them around and show them what plants or whatever?" "Oh yeah, sure, I'll do that." So I brought a group of third or fourth graders out one year. There's like 25 kids, and all of their parents and chaperones and things are going. And we're going on this tour through a park in Spokane, and we're showing them all the different foods and the different medicines and the different things that are growing there. And we finally get to the end of this tour, and one of the parents comes up to me, and she says, "I need to talk to you." She's crying. And I think, oh my God, I've said something. What is she going to tell me? What have I done? And then what she says to me, like, really shook me. She says, "I've lived in this town for 22 years, and 6 of the plants and the medicines that you've talked about are growing in my backyard. And I've spent these 22 years trying to kill these weeds, and had no idea that these sacred things were living right here in my own home." And she's crying as she's telling me this. And I said to her, "Well, this is why I do what I do, because you can't love what you don't know." And so the takeaway or the moral that you can take away whatever you want. Can't control that. But one that I would suggest is that I would really hope and pray that wherever you live, that you would take the time and the interest to become acquainted with what's growing there naturally. What plants, what medicines, what fruits, what roots, what berries, whatever it is, to become familiar with those things. And so when I think about Native education or Indian education, I think it's more than just, knowing the stories or learning the histories. I mean, that's all part of it, that's a piece of it. But it's also becoming familiar with the land that we live on. Because this larger culture has done a really good job of trying to take everything out and putting other things in place. And sometimes you have to try hard to be able to see the things that are actually there. And so that's my hope and my prayer, that we come away from this and can have a deeper appreciation and respect for the spirit of this land, the spirit of this place, wherever we are. And when you invite me back after the snow, then I'll tell you a coyote story.